Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon, and joining me, my host, companion, and biggest man of the year in Winslow, Indiana, is Sejohn. Hey, Sejohn.
Yes, it's a weird contest, but I am in fact the biggest man in Winslow, Indiana.
I forgot what they're calling you. Like they gave you the key to the city briefly, right? You had it for half an hour. And
I don't know,
that's
but
when we give it to people.
I do know that they did make me an officer somewhere along the line, so I am an Officer Winslow.
Oh, you son of a bitch! All right, end of the episode. Thanks for playing. But no, hi, welcome to the Say Report.
How would the syntax be that? Just for the joke. Anyway,
I have too many things I'm excited to talk about this week. If I had absolutely nothing, and I was afraid I had nothing until I started going through notes this morning, I would have done that. But no, I have things to talk about. And starting off, as I enjoy a star-spangled splash Mountain Dew with this, I have a correction that I need to mention. And
there's probably a couple that we need to talk about.
Yeah, we do have a couple that we need to talk about. Sunkist is part of the Dr. Pepper company. I had incorrectly said that it was Pepsi, and that was wrong. So
no, I actually have learned some stuff about soda classification that we should probably address someday. Not the necessarily correction, but did you know the Dr. classification unto itself as a pepper soda?
Really? I didn't know that. That is news to me. It makes sense in a way, but
it's not a cola, it's not a fruit soda, it's not a root beer. It is a pepper soda. It is a classification. Those are classifications you can have with soda.
That's kind of insane. I'm not gonna lie about that at all.
I mean, named after Dr. Pepper. They didn't know how to classify it, so they were like, "You're a pepper soda." That's what you qualify as, I guess.
That's okay. There was another one I said, "Oh, this is a correction that I need to make next time."
Oh, we need to talk about Horizon because.
Oh yeah, it was Horizon. Thank you. We turns out
we were being too generous to that movie.
Yeah. And here's the thing: I still do want to see it, but Horizon doing poorly enough that we talk about it on the Say Report. That wasn't the only thing that happened when it did poorly. They also pulled its August release date for the sequel.
Yeah, and possibly have talked about the idea of a fourth movie not happening, which is interesting. However, with the third movie currently filming, there's been rumors that what they'll do is just slam 3 and 4 together, but nobody really knows what's going on. I mean, it's a wild thing to still keep an eye on. I don't think it's gone yet from the annals of history. This is not the last we have heard about Kevin Costner's Project Horizon. But yeah, there's a lot more going on with that than we had even addressed. And so we just wanted to make sure we covered a couple more bases there.
Yeah, we called an audible to record early, and part of that was just talking about things that had interested us. And as it turns out, we had not done our full due diligence on Horizon: An American Saga, Chapter 1. Maybe chapter done? I don't know. I don't know at all.
I don't think so yet. I really don't. I do think that project is something that is too weird to just disappear.
It's too weird to die. Too big to fail, too weird to die.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's that. And one other thing, and we will address it deeper later into the episode. I was so proud at the end of our last very special episode covering Spider-Man 2. Not proud of Spider-Man 2, but proud to continue the Kirsten Dunst of it all. But I fucked up, totally. August is Bring It On month, not July. So a little bit later in the episode, so that it's the last thing you hear, we'll remind you of the new homework you have to do for this month's very special episode.
You can still watch Bring It On all you want.
Watch Bring It On, watch Bring It On again. Be ready for August, but I messed up pretty egregiously with thinking it was a July movie at the Say Report, and it's an August movie at the Say Report.
That's why I don't call shots on this show anymore.
Yeah, see, Sejohn's smart, but me, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I'm going to call every shot I can. Also, some other stuff happened, but we're not going to talk about it on the show. In fact, I'm really happy we recorded on Friday. That's all I'm going to say about it. See if you can solve the mystery of what I'm talking about.
I don't know if they honestly could with the frickin' week this country has had, but anyway.
It has been a week. That is a very good point that Sejohn makes. But yeah, we called an audible, and because of that, we didn't have to talk about something, and I think we're going to avoid talking about that something unless more details come out, which I'm not really expecting more details about it. I also don't want to talk about one of the aftermaths of it, but I'm a little disappointed in, I guess he wasn't one of my childhood heroes, but I was compared to him enough that I have some affinity for him.
Oh.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry about you and your feelings about Kid Rock.
Oh no, fuck you. Fuck that. No. Not even Hulk Hogan. But we're not going political right now. It's not political time at This Day Report. It is report time at This Day Report. And I've done some cool stuff this week. The thing I would like to start the episode talking about, if Sejohn will oblige me, is the film Twisters.
Hell the fuck yes. Let's talk about some Twisters.
So overall, the spoilers for the movie Twisters are going to follow. And they're not going to be huge spoilers. I'm not going to give anything big away, other than the biggest twist of them all. But that isn't really, you're going to hear it and you're going to be like, oh, but that didn't ruin the movie for me, hopefully.
Do they realize that they can, like, lead them around with, like, maps with Sharpies or something? Like, what's going on?
Well, no, I mean, so I guess the biggest spoiler for Twisters is that is a name in name-only sequel, which is my favorite type of sequel sometimes.
Yeah.
A lot of these, I mean, so it's not like a requel or one of those situations. I guess it is more, I don't know. Requel means that someone from the original is there, right? All of these terms that we have for movies.
No. I don't feel like that's one of the rules for a requel. I feel like that requel is very much applied to this very situation.
Okay.
In that they are trying to reboot via a sequel. Well, okay, so I did not see Twisters. So this is where we're gonna have to have this discussion right now that we're having.
I love it. Yeah.
Do they make any reference whatsoever? Like, are we led to believe it is the same world, even though it is not the same characters?
So the only reference to the original Twister film from 1996, which because of Will, we will be doing a very special episode on. Will has pretty much planned out our 2026 very special episode season. I just want Sejohn to be aware of that. I have realized every suggestion he has sent is from 1996, which kind of blows my mind. So we got some good stuff, and Twister is one of them. Like, ripping that Band-Aid off.
I mean, Twister is also just a fun movie. Like, I would love to just talk about Twisters.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I'm not disappointed in that at all.
No.
But no, so if they don't make any... Sorry, is there a single reference, any reference?
The only reference to Twister is that the Dorothy 5 shows up in the opening scene. So Dorothy...
So it is the same world.
It is definitely the same world.
Then it is a requel. It is not just a remake. It is a requel.
Right. But the whole movie, I was expecting Daisy Edgar-Rice's, like, mother, because they talk about her mother a bunch, to be revealed as Helen Hunt.
Right.
That's what I was expecting.
Well, I wonder if there's a copy of the script where that's the case, right? Like that almost feels like, oh, we put a lot of leading like elements into this beat that never pays off, because eventually it was supposed to, but we couldn't get the right people in the room, or somebody was like, nah, this isn't gonna work for me, or nobody's gonna care. Like that feels vestige of a version of the script that was much more related to the original film.
So I get that, but there were 2 sequels to Twisters that were in the works. One of them was Bill Paxton and James Cameron doing something together.
Not Twisters, Twister, right?
Twister, sequel to Twister. That was Bill Paxton and James Cameron. Like, they were really going to dive into actual, like, tornado events, sort of like a Titanic type thing. But also Helen Hunt, who we're talking about not showing up in the film, had a version of a Twister sequel that she brought to Universal in July of 2020 that would have also, and this is the craziest part of it, is that she wanted to direct it and to have it star Daveed Diggs. So the fact that Anthony Ramos is in this movie, like, there's still a weird Hamilton connection through that, right? But her idea went into a development stage, but then was canceled by the end of 2020. And, like, I wonder why. But the fact that Helen Hunt had her own sequel pitch to the original Twister that eventually fell through, I do wonder if this project even had it on the radar. Because Paxton's fell through eventually when he passed away. Rest in Paxton. Love you, Bill Paxton. I absolutely love you. Yeah. I will never confuse you with Bill Pullman. And that's a fact, Jack. And then Helen Hunt had a version of the sequel where she, like, wanted to, like, take it head on and big deal. And that fell through. So I do wonder if that means that this particular film was just grown in its own test tube using, DNA scrapings from the first movie. Being specifically the Dorothy device. And that is a crazy thing that the Dorothy device is there also because it's Dorothy 5. But, like, overall, Twisters was an excellent experience. My only complaint is the opening of Twisters. The opening of Twisters is my big complaint. And here are, like, the bigger spoilers. When you introduce a group of 5 ragtag meteorologist PhD students, and only 2 of them have been shown in any of the marketing, what does that tell you, Sejohn? What does that indicate to Sejohn Sarowick?
Don't get too attached to the other 3.
Yeah, right. I sure hope you didn't come see this movie for Karen Shipka, because that would have been a mistake. And it really kind of felt like a fridging in so many ways. Like that.
So here's the thing, like the original Twister, right? Like there's a lot here about them choosing to make a sequel to Twister in the first place that it really has always kind of not confused me out of anything, but it's always interesting to me what wells certain people want to try and get into, right? Dig into again. I did not know Twister was a deep well for people to dig into. Clearly, it has hit a nerve with some people. People are all about this movie, and people. When the sequel's announced at the Super Bowl preview and stuff like that, I more people than I realized were very excited about a sequel to Twister. Cool shit. Like, love that. Love finding out about a fan base I didn't really know existed. That kind of thing, right? But then my big thing is that I remember Twister as a family. Like, we hung out and watched that movie, and it never struck me as like a. I guess the category is disaster film, but like I never saw the original Twister that way. Whereas I feel very much like this is very much on the vein of like a 28 days later, Day After Tomorrow, 2012 with John Cusack there, or San Andreas with
The Rock,
with The
Dwayne
Rock, right? Like, yeah, like a natural disaster film is where this seems to have really landed as in terms of the film genres, which I don't know. I was really young when I saw the first one. Am I just misremembering? Would you classify the first film in the same category?
The opening scene of Twisters is devastating. That opening scene is really like, that's the thing that sticks with you. But then it has so much humor inserted into it. The way that I would define Twister, and come for me, everybody here, and I know why this is why I would define it this way, it's Jaws with tornadoes instead of sharks. Yeah. That is what Twister is to me. And Jaws, for all of the moments that are, like, scary in the movie Jaws, like, it's got a pretty light tone. It's kind of comedic. There's a reason why the movie where, like, a 5-year-old is eaten by a great white shark is fondly remembered and beloved.
As, like, a summer family film.
Like, yeah. And that's because of the rest of the tone of that film. Twister,
which is very Spielberg, to be clear.
Right.
Like, we are getting into the Amblin Entertainment style, like, film that is rare magic that people have tried to recreate many times and failed, right? Is that balance of those exact elements is part and parcel for that style of film, right?
Yeah. Yes. So the original Twister, I mean, it's been such a long time since I've seen the original Twister. We kept trying to watch it this week and stuff just kept happening that got in the way of it, which a little disappointing, but overall, I'm kind of glad I went into Twisters completely unburdened by anything from the original film, because I think it made it a more enjoyable experience for me in a lot of ways. Like, I remembered the Dorothy enough to be like, oh, it's the Dorothy. But also, I mean, that opening scene happens and then there's a 5-year time jump. So let's imagine that it takes place in 2025 just for the ease of everything. And that original scene is in 2020. So you're meaning to tell me that in 24 years, you did not develop Dorothy beyond a 5th version of Dorothy? Like, shouldn't it be like Dorothy 20 or Dorothy like... Shouldn't it have been something higher than this is the 5th version of Dorothy? And we're like, we perfected it. We didn't need to do anything more. This is the perfect version of this storm tracking device.
Especially because Dorothy
is destroyed.
Yeah. Well, no, but more importantly, the effort to make her like should have kept going. Like the sensibility of we need to remain on the edge of this technology in order to carefully track this pattern to save more people. Like the entire concept of why they build Dorothy in the first movie would be evidence alone that there would be more versions of as you go along.
Nope. Dorothy 4, we attach little soda can propellers to it. Dorothy 5, they have more blades on them, and that's it. That's where this is perfect now. The Dorothy 5 is the perfect version of this. But there's also the fact that, like, the Dorothy, by its very nature, like, this is one of the issues that I have with the original Twister, to be just completely honest. By its very nature, is designed for one use only.
Yeah.
Like, those little tracker things get sucked up into a tornado, and they collect data, they transmit the data, but then they're also in a fucking tornado. So they're not surviving. Like, there's never a scene where they're like, oh, we got to collect all 120 little balls before another tornado comes. Like, it is very much, okay, now we have, like, more of these.
Right. It's like they do with satellites, where they send them up into space for this to take a few pictures, but they know that they're not going to land gracefully when they come back.
Right.
So they just make it so that's...
Yeah, it would be prohibitively more expensive to try to retrieve them rather than design them knowing they're a one-use piece of technology.
Well, and then completely unreasonable to then reuse, like, questionable pieces, right? Because you don't know about the integrity of the thing after it has been in this kind of environment.
Yeah, exactly. It's just one of those situations where hyper unbelievable that with all of the progress they've made, they're just using Dorothy 5 at this time. I don't... Like, it could still be the same logo that it is, but then it also seems as if this ragtag group of, like, PhD students have used Dorothy for multiple, like, excursions.
So are they, like, doing this, like, under the radar? Is that part... Well, forget the pun, I guess, but, like, is that part of the joke, though? Is that, like, they're not supposed to be doing it? Or they're, like... I guess maybe because they're grad students, they're using old tech. Maybe that's the bit.
Yeah, so I think that might be the bit. It's like they're not working with Helen Hunt or Bill Paxton or any of the people that we see from the first movie. They are very much trying to secure a grant with their magic disrupt a tornado theory. Yeah. So, I mean, that was the weird thing about the beginning. And then they do the 5-year skip, which... I know personally I'm not a big fan of that, but it is a narrative device that we use just all the time in everything. Like, I was going to say just in movies, but, like, it seems like 5 years is something that we've decided is enough time for you to be, like, a bit okay with that traumatic experience that happened in your past.
Well, the other big thing about 5 years is that it's like visually, like movie making wise, gives you the opportunity for something to have happened in the past, but for you to not have to change clothes.
True.
That's... Like literally, like they don't have to worry about costuming for different eras, quote unquote, different generations. Actors don't need to look older, right? Like they can just get a haircut. Like 5 years is the good amount of time for you to say that time has passed and you should have distance from this thing, while at the same time visually we don't have to change anything.
That's a very good point, Sejohn. Thank you. I had never considered why it was, but yeah. So that whole thing, and then 5 years in the future, the only two surviving people from the devastating tornado in the opening are Anthony Ramos and Daisy Edgar-Rice, and Anthony Ramos has now become a storm searcher after having joined the military and working with like PAR, telescope, and visualization technology. And now they have super experimental portable PAR devices. So what he wants to do is triangulate around a tornado in order to get a perfect 3D model of a funnel so that they can better understand them. And the only person who can like predict tornadoes is Daisy Edgar-Rice's Kate Cooper. And it's like, oh, okay. So just give me a week of your time. And then, like, there's a weird storyline where he's kind of working for a corrupt sheriff who's trying to, like, buy up land after tornadoes have hit. Like, well, I'll buy the land for pennies on the dollar so these people can rebuild their lives. And that plot line goes fucking nowhere.
I really don't remember much about the original, so like I don't remember there being like any sinister.
No, there isn't. Like it's a weird thing. Like the coolest thing about Twister and Twisters is showing like what a movie needs to be a movie. Because in Twister, they're just like, we want to chase the storm and get this information, but then there's also like the rival storm chasers. Who like don't want us to get the information about storms.
Well, and like the bit of Twister that I do remember is that a lot of it is them being kind of their own worst enemies in that regard. Because of this competition, they are putting themselves in danger, which is a weirdly like I love this story because it's weirdly reminiscent of the story of fossil finding, right? That we get a little taste of in the Jurassic Park movies as well, where like there were two rival groups of people out here in this part of the country, funny enough, looking for fossils, and they got so deep into the rivalry that over like dinosaur bones they were like committing like conspiracy and murder and shit like that. Like it was like crazy, right? And in Twister you see a little bit of that with these two kind of like going after each other to the point where they're putting each other and putting themselves in dangerous situations that they don't necessarily need to be in, just for the thrill-seeking like glory of it all. Like, and that is where I remember a lot of the antagonism coming from in Twister, right? That and the Twister itself. So, like, to add this, like, weirdly political element of, like, disaster cleanup relief being, like politically charged with, like, a local sheriff is a wild way to go, I guess.
It is a wild thing that, like, only exists, like, so far in the background that you could miss it. Like, it's clearly there, but, like, when they first come into Oklahoma, because it all takes place in Oklahoma, Tornado Alley, and the tornadoes are getting worse, right? So we need to find a way to stop them. Like, they treat tornadoes like they are living creatures, which is, like, bonkers. And that's where, like, the jaws of it all really, like, just came into focus for me, is, like, I mean, sharks are living creatures. Tornadoes are weather events that happen. Tornadoes do not have, like, thoughts about what they're doing.
Intention, right? Like, yeah. The tornadoes do not have intention, which is kind of, like, one of the scariest things about them. Why would you try giving it to them?
Yeah, it's like, okay. Like, they don't care. But when they come in, they drive by re-elect Sheriff Marshall Riggs. And I'm like, oh, I bet he's going to be a problem. And, like, he kind of was a problem, but, like, I don't think you ever really hear... He doesn't ever, like, talk to the audience. You overhear him talking to Anthony Ramos and his, like, partner at Stormpar, which they named their trucks Tin Man, Scarecrow, Lion, and Wizard. So it's like, we get it, guys. We get that Dorothy was in the first Twister movie. But other than that, like... Once you meet Glenn Powell and them, and that's like not till 20 minutes into the movie that Glenn Powell shows up, you know, the king of the requel. Yeah. He shows up and once he's there, it's like, this is awesome. Like, this is excellent that everything is going on. And he's the thing that makes it happen because his group of storm chasers, yes, they are like YouTube people and they're Arkansas crazy. Like, that's a moment that happens. Like, they're called Arkansas crazy. No offense to the state of Arkansas. It's a thing that happens in Twisters. But then
take offense with the movie if that's where you want to take offense.
Yeah, take offense with the movie. It's not me who's saying that. It is the film. The Stay Report has nothing against the state of Arkansas or Arkansas, if you're nasty. But it's one of those situations where then you see that, like, despite the YouTube of it all, like, Glenn Powell actually has his PhD in meteorology. and then all the other people are like people who know how to produce like really good content, or like who have technical minds to build drones that like can get sucked up in a tornado but not destroyed. Like, you know, it's made of a polymer so that, you know, the wind goes through it, it doesn't rip through it, it doesn't rip it to shreds. Like, there's some cool moments in it, and all of those actors are like actors that you like from other things, and it's like, so these are gonna be the good guys, right? The film is just so blatantly like foreshadowing what's coming next, but then what really shines are the disaster moments, and I don't want to spoil any of those, but like the disaster moments really, really well done. Like the devastation and the way that like they react to them is really cool. Except for the fact that like it does that horror trope of like, oh, this guy's an asshole, so like he dies. Like, I understand that was a thing that happened in like 70s movies when they were like kind of modern parables, to be like, don't be an asshole or Jason fucking kills you. Is it different when it's a tornado? Right? Mm-hmm. Like, are you saying that it is divine retribution for this guy being mean to the teller at the hotel? And then that whole thing is kind of flushed down the drain when also the guy who was getting berated as just a clerk at the hotel is killed by the same tornado. Like, you muddied the water there.
Yeah, there is a certain amount of like catharsis and dopamine release in watching that kind of stuff happen, right? There's a reason why audiences are drawn to that. So like, it's the the big thing that I want to compare it to is Jurassic Park, right?
Right.
Like, because like that the idea that the lawyer gets eaten off the toilet is like a big kind of cathartic moment in that movie, right? This guy that's been a jerk the whole time, but it's okay because the kids make it and all the good adults make it, right? Like there is this weird kind of element of like the good guys get to live because they are good guys in these movies that audiences like that doesn't surprise me too much. I guess what it is for me is I'm not surprised that it's full of a bunch of these like big tropey bits, because as far as I can tell, that's exactly what it promised.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's what the movie was like always promising to be, from what I've understood. And again, to its credit, from what I understand, people that have seen it have loved it because it is doing exactly that. It's a movie built for an audience right now.
All the films that we've talked about could save cinema. Twisters feels like the first film I've seen this year that could save cinema.
But by doing what? By pushing no envelopes? By just going back to these old these old what's the word? Formulas for film, right? Like was that really what we want to say?
Right. I mean, it made $32.2 million on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
The weekend is not going to be reported till later. No,
but it made a bunch of money on its Thursday premieres, right? Wasn't that the big news? That it made something like $11 million on Thursday alone?
But I mean, just talking about my theater, seeing it at, 12:30 on a Friday, it was a pretty packed house.
Yeah.
When usually I go to those early morning laser projection shows, and I'm lucky if there's double digit people in there.
Yeah, but I do think it's going to do well, and from what I understand, again, it is built to please people, and it's working, and good, cool, that's rare right now. There are a lot of movies that are being built to please people that are not. So,
yeah, I mean, Bad Boys Ride or Die was another really good one in terms of sequel, but again, we just had the third one 5 years ago, so it's not as impressive as something like finally a sequel to Twister. Because I'll admit, I mean, I loved Twister when I saw Twister as a kid. 10-year-old Devon ate Twister up. And all I wanted was more Twister movies. Because of, I was learning about the weather stuff, and I was being entertained. That's what always worked about that movie for me. And they're great characters. They do this really good job to build these characters. And the main characters, the characters that actually matter, the characters that survive to just be an asshole in no uncertain terms, are all actors that I liked, and I felt like all of the characters were very well developed. They weren't shallow. But then, you talk about the lawyer in Jurassic Park, that's cathartic because we see him being an asshole for, half the movie. We get time to see it so that when something bad happens to him, it feels kind of well, you've been a jerk this whole time. by the nature of this movie, by the fact that they're like chasing things, like we only saw that guy who's like, I'll give you a bad review on Yelp, and then gets eaten by a tornado. And it's like, I mean, like, I didn't really know that guy, right? Like, I knew like the archetype. Like it wasn't like something that like I built up to have a problem with him. Yeah, and then the girl, and then like the other girl who's like, no, there's not going to be a real tornado. It's going to blow over. And then she gets eaten by the tornado. And it's like, I don't know if she necessarily needed to die either. Like, boy who cried wolf syndrome with somebody who lives in Tornado Alley, that kind of makes sense. Like, her just, like, being scared. Like, it was nobody that, like, there was no catharsis for me.
So this is where you start to move into that idea that this feels like, and again, having not seen it for people like, but this feels like it's much more of a disaster film than it is these other ones, because that is something that we do see all the time in these disaster films. You know, you see the old couple in Titanic holding themselves as the boat sinks type stuff, right? Where like it is a disaster film is a disaster because it does not care who does or doesn't deserve it. We see people suffer that don't necessarily merit that, right? But it is the nature of nature in those regards, right? Day After Tomorrow, 2012, we see those moments of these people that are supposed to be, you know, decent humans, but unfortunately, because of the way that these things work, a lot of decent humans get caught in the catastrophe, right? The collateral damage. And that is where a lot of the like hit in the feels comes from for a lot of these films, right? I'm thinking also of like the old like what's the one about the Towering Inferno, right, with Steve McQueen and stuff like that. Like, you know, you see some unfortunate moments in those movies, and those are big and dramatic and sad moments, but it makes it all the more better when certain people do make it out and things like that, right? Like, so that's where this is starting to feel so much more like a disaster film, is this conversation of like this cannon fodder that's introduced, you barely get to know, and then boom, they're gone. And it's just like, this kind of makes it very horrific in a way that like I don't remember Twister feeling horrific when I watched it as a 10-year-old kid,
and I think that's why those are the moments that like stuck out to me, why like the three people who were basically bus meat in the opening scene, it's like, man, like Twister, you got to kind of know everybody. So when like what happens to Philip Seymour Hoffman in that movie happens to Philip Seymour Hoffman, you feel something. Whether it's good or bad, it depends on how you felt about his character and what he was doing. But like you got time to know everybody, so like it felt like there were stakes. So like, and based on the trailers that played with this movie, I felt really bad because there was like a young girl in the theater, and I'm talking like maybe 8 years old. She had cat ears on. She was excited to see the movie. And then the trailers that played before it were like horrific. Like all horror movies. By the way, Trap, the new M. Night Shyamalan film, don't watch the new trailer because all of the mystery from the original trailer has been removed.
Oh,
like I was like,
I don't remember the original trailer having much mystery. But we'll talk about Trap another time.
Yeah, we'll talk about Trap after it comes out.
I got some thoughts and some theories about Trap, but like the open conversation about the trailer for that movie was about how it gave the entire movie away in 2 minutes. So I'm curious to hear what the new trailer does that somehow overdoes that.
So because of the fact that the original Trapped trailer felt like it gave the whole movie away, my like mental gymnastics because of that was, so then obviously he can't be the target, right? They're trying to get somebody else, but he's just somebody like it. There's always, you never know the secret life.
We'll talk about Trap at a different time.
Sorry. But then the new one like really kind of, I guess like my mental gymnastics, like I need some Bengay because my muscles are sore for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But there's that whole feeling there. But like the other ones, like all really, really dark horror trailers before Twisters. And then, there was a really good, Wicked. The final trailer was Wicked. Like it was all the Blumhouse films that are coming out for the rest of the year, and then Wicked, to which I turned to Dale and said, you like movies with tornadoes in them? Because, like, that's what it felt like. It
Well,
felt
it's
like...
not just tornadoes, right? It is the Dorothy Tidman. Like there are
Yeah.
direct connections.
There's a
It's
well,
not
but I
just,
didn't
like,
know
a
that was
tornado
coming. I just know that, like, well, the tornado is the inciting action of the Wizard of Oz, right? So that was funny, and that, like, in that little, like, cat-eared girl, right? Which also, quick detour. Hello Kitty is not a cat. Hello Kitty is a little girl. What the fuck is that?
Yeah, that's been a conversation for a while in that community, but Hello Kitty is a cat. Like
Hello Kitty is an
there's
anthropomorphized
definitely
cat.
an avid part of that fan base that has been adamant that, like, while they are anthropomorphic animals in visualization, they are not understood to be that way. They have pets, essentially, is like one of the
Mickey
big
Mouse
arguments.
has
It's like,
Pluto.
yes,
He's a
she
mouse.
looks like a cat, but she also has a cat. And it's like, well,
Yeah, and
Disney exists, and we still call Goofy a dog.
yeah, exactly. Raphael has a pet turtle. I mean, granted, he becomes a mutant and gets really mad at Raphael, and he's like, "Don't call me by my slave name." Man, the 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show, they really just did not give a fuck. But Ninja Turtles is a topic for later on down the line. But the thing about Twister, it was good, but you're not wrong. Like, it is that type of movie now has to have that sort of horror-y element in order to, like, stimulate an audience to go see it. And
that's kind of disappointing considering that what those movies used to, like, what that type of movie used to be. Like, it feels like we've lost a little bit of a genre here, like, or a subgenre, because, like, they can't just be fun. They also have to somehow have these weird elements of, like overdoing it.
Yeah. And so, like, I mean, overall, I loved my experience with it. I do believe that it could be the one to save cinema in 2024. Though, again, that'd be a lot of heavy lifting that it has to do. But I was not expecting to see the audience I saw for Twisters. And that's mostly because every conversation I've had about Twisters is people like, really? Like, no one seemed enthused about it except for me. So that was a little disappointing. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, that must, people around us have been excited. Like, it's been one of those few moments. Like I said, ever since the Super Bowl preview came out, it's been one of those few movies that I have actually heard people, Deadpool and Wolverine being maybe the only other one that I could point to right now. But generally, we've talked about this many times that, like, people just aren't excited about movies right now. So Twisters is one of those ones that I will say is the rare exception to that conversation for me. Like, people do seem to be talking about that movie and do seem to be excited about getting to see it. So, like, I really do hope that, like, we see something cool come out of it in terms of box office and stuff, because if this is what reinvigorates people to go out to the movies again this summer, like, cool. Like, I'm excited because we need more movies hitting like this right now.
Yeah. So I guess the scarier thing about it is, right, and the reason why Twisters ultimately probably won't save cinema is that next weekend, right, 5 days from when this episode releases, not 4 days from when this episode releases, Deadpool Wolverine comes out. So it's not like Twisters is going to have that time to, like, develop an audience. Like,
well, so this is the hope, though, right? Is that we people have the ability to go to more than one movie. They just have not been choosing to do that recently, which is kind of part of the problem, right? But now that we've got two movies in cinema, like, kind of not on the level of, but kind of going back to the Oppenheimer Barbie stuff of last year, right?
Yeah.
We are kind of hitting that moment of the summer now where there's going to be two big movies out there that have relatively vocal fan bases that are, like, out there talking about how much they're enjoying these movies. I mean, Deadpool Wolverine already has gotten some interesting reviews. I don't think it's worth talking about yet until next week, but, like, there's already been some stuff that have come out about, like, Wolverine in a yellow suit made me cry, like, that kind of stuff, like already. So I think that potentially, like, having those two movies at the same time in theaters is actually kind of the thing that we're talking about wanting to get back to, right? Like, that idea that people are going more to the movies more than once a month, right?
Yeah. And that's a good point. And also the R rating of Deadpool Wolverine, I think that maybe families are going to go see Twister. I was also surprised.
Never stop Deadpool or Deadpool
Yeah.
2, but anyway.
I mean, I prefer Once Upon a Deadpool if we're going to be completely honest about
Well,
Deadpool
right,
2.
which I think will
So-
be an interesting thing as well, is are people going to hold off on bringing their kids to this one, considering that that option was eventually given to them with Deadpool 2 last time? But yeah, that's a conversation.
That's
for
a
next
conversation for once we've seen the film. But yeah, so before we finish film talk, is there any other films you want to discuss that you experienced over this week? Because we got a lot to talk about video game wise. Like
I will drop this. The family recently signed up for Paramount Plus, legitimately for Twin Peaks. Like that is why we signed up for Paramount Plus.
No one's mad about that.
I don't know if we're going to hold on to Paramount Plus because I love Twin Peaks, but I was introducing it to the family, and they have gotten on board with it now to the point where we have finally bitten the bullet and just ordered like some really good editions of the television shows and the Criterion collection of Fire Walk with Me and stuff like that. Like, so we're now invested in the physical media, so we don't necessarily need Paramount Plus, but I might keep it around for a little bit longer because I decided to duck into a little show on the side, and that is Queen Latifah and the Equalizer. Holy shit, dude. Have you watched that version of that story?
I've watched every episode of it. The Equalizer with Queen Latifah, and it's weird that there are literally 2 Equalizers going on right now. Once the Queen Latifah Equalizer happened, I didn't think there'd be any more Denzel Washington movies, and then Equalizer 3 happened. And they didn't call it Threequalizer. I'm very proud of them for avoiding that pitfall, right?
That is not the franchise to dive into those kinds of dumb puns, right?
I didn't think Taken was going to be either, and then Take 3 came out. So Take 3 I thought that was a pretty serious one. John Wick, I think that they're not going to mess with it either. But yeah, no, that Queen Latifah show is awesome. And it's awesome because of Adam Goldberg and Lisa Lapira. Like the fact that
they're pretty phenomenal.
The fact that she has a team and isn't just her equalizing is, I mean, first of all, it feels like in so many ways a sequel series to God Friended Me, because of Adam Goldberg being the like tech genius that he is. And then God Friended Me also felt like a sequel to Person of Interest because of the whole machine that can predict like terrorism attacks and things that need to be like thwarted before they happen. So then early edition, if we just want to like trace the lineage, but then so much of what's happening in that Equalizer show feels like Person of Interest, the way that she gets involved with people.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is just that good old fashioned, way back in like in the day, like just story of the week. Like, this is a person that needs help. This is a person that we know is going to succeed in helping them. Like, watch the magic unfold for 40 minutes in front of you. Like, and I love those. We've talked very much on the show about shows like Leverage, right? Like, and things like that, about how much those hit really nice with us. I have always held up Burn Notice and White Collar as like these shows that like I really love, and those White Collar kind of moves away from it once it gets deeper into its own story. But Burn Notice is like one of those ones where even in the last season there's like one-off episodes that are just them helping somebody. I am a sucker for that kind of television, and like part of it is that I like the safety of knowing that at the end of the episode everything's gonna be okay, right? And like and yeah, there could be 2-part episodes and cliffhanger season endings and stuff like that, and that'll happen in those series as well. But generally, by the end of the episode, you can expect that everything's gonna be all right, you know. And like I need that kind of show in my life sometimes, and the problem is that I get very into those kinds of shows, then I watch them to death, and then they don't hit the same anymore. You know, I kind of had to step away from Leverage for a while after watching so much Leverage that like it kind of wasn't giving me that dopamine burst anymore every time I was watching them succeed, right? So this is now doing that for me, and I am all on board. Like I just love this kind of shit, but also I just like. I don't, you know, maybe this is something about me as an audience member and my expectations in the world and stuff like that, but both the film and the television show do this really, really interesting thing where we are using an older actor in a role that is not traditionally given to them at this level, right? And I know that there's been this big move over the last 15, 20 years to really kind of do this because we have a lot of actors that are just still doing it like as they get older, right? Denzel Washington being a perfect example of that. But you already mentioned like Taken, right? With like Liam Neeson doing the action movie, but still being like 72 years old, right? Even Keanu Reeves is getting up there with the John Wick series. It's just it's cool to see a successful show on television that has an older actor in this main role, that is also an older black actress, right? Like that's just not it's not the traditional role that we put these kinds of actors in, right? And so that's just really cool as well. Is just this element to it that they clearly celebrate, because like they go out of their way to talk about, you know, parts of the city that we don't normally hear about, or types of things that are happening to people in this community that as a 37-year-old white dude I'm not necessarily privy to this understanding of, right? Like so there's just also a lot, like a really cool slant aspect of that going on with the show that I really am enjoying as well. But overall, like it's just a badass show where we're getting to watch Queen Latifah just kick people's asses and save people's lives, and like I need that kind of just like the cathartic, I know this is going to be good in 40 minutes type of show right now, and it's doing it for me really well.
Yeah. It kind of surpassed Magnum PI, which was really good in terms of that on CBS, and then when it went to NBC, things kind of fell apart with that. But
Magnum,
was it Magnum PI? Yeah.
Yeah, when Magnum PI moved to NBC and all that. Yeah.
Like it kind of it lost the heart that you're kind of talking about. Something like Equalizer still has. The only thing I got to say, since we are singing the praises of Equalizer right now, I don't know how far in you are with it, but Christopher Noth is in at least the first season, and I think a little bit of the second season. So just like a bit of a trigger warning there, if everything that he did is something that you're not 100% on board with. He's not a main character by any stretch. He is sort of like a recurring guest star, but it is just something to be aware of. Because I know I was watching reruns of it, like they're now in syndication, so like we had the CW on and we were watching an episode, and I'm like, oh yeah, this was really good, and then he showed up at the end to be the Deus Ex Machina, and I'm like, fuck, I forgot that you were in the show, because they did such a good job to like move away from you being a part of the show. It is a thing to just keep in mind. If you're going to check out Equalizer.
And do they, I mean, he is still around as kind of pop in from time to time. Do they write him out at some point? Is that what happens?
I don't want to spoil it for you, since you seem to be enjoying the show.
But like, he's not somebody that I need to worry about being around the whole time, right?
Right.
Okay.
It's not one of those things where like, we're just going to deal with Kevin Spacey. No, they do the right thing and remove him.
Okay.
And I don't want to tell you how, because it's important to the show. But yeah, that's a really good one. And you say you burn out on Leverage, so I do have a couple of questions on that one before we move forward. The one question I have is, did you do any of Leverage Redemption?
I did a couple of episodes, but I have such a problem with, because it was on Freevee when I was watching.
Yes,
is that still where it is?
I don't know, because so the third season is going to be on Amazon Prime, like for real. Like it's no longer going to be a Freevee show.
I need to get back into it then, because all of my problems with Leverage Redemption were legitimately just the structures around having to watch it on Freevee just were not doing it for me.
So I don't know if the fact that it is the third season will be on Amazon Prime will mean that they move it over, but also we can have a discussion off mic about your feelings on the first two seasons of Leverage Redemption. That's what I'm going to say. Because I was able to finally watch, not wrong, Freevee made it very difficult to watch Leverage Redemption, a show I was legitimately excited about. And then they aired it on like Ion Television. And, you know, the normal broadcast model of commercials having a DVR made it much more palatable. And then the second season, they literally were like Leverage Redemption Marathon. Here's the first 8 episodes. Here's the second 8 episodes. So we were able to watch through it that way. And that made it, again, because Freevee is awful. Like, of all of the ways that you can consume media online streaming, Freevee is the bottom of the barrel for me.
Right.
It just, like, I don't need to see 8 Tide commercials in a row. I just flat out don't need to see 8 Tide commercials in a row. They don't have the marketers, and they do not know when to come in with a commercial. If it's an original program for your service, like no one commercial breaks should be. Don't just randomly do it in the middle of a scene.
No, like I said, all of my issues with watching anything with that it was all freebie related. It wasn't really the show's fault. So I don't honestly know if I have a real opinion about that show because of my kind of just desire to just move away from freebie really being the thing that led me away. But anyway.
So Redemption is supposedly coming back soon for season 3. So we'll have to talk about that. I mean, also, so then Almost Paradise, probably the same problem. The Christian Kane, like not spin-off, but also made by Dean Devlin, where he's in the Philippines as a retired federal officer.
I don't even think I knew about that.
That show's incredible. Rufio is in the 2nd season.
Okay, well, definitely have to take that one in. Yeah, like I'm just so Paramount Plus is in the house for right now. If anybody's got any suggestions on things I should check out before we get rid of it, because now that, like I said, now that we've ordered like literal, like I think today, physical copies of Twin Peaks will be in this house by the end of today. So we don't really need it for that anymore. I will say this: the convenience, even owning a physical copy of things, I will say that the convenience of being able to access streaming in certain places that I don't always have the ability with physical media. I don't have a Blu-ray player hooked to every device in my house, but there are certain places where, like, if I'm in the kitchen cooking and I want to put on Seinfeld or something while I cook, I'm not going to go pull out my Seinfeld collection and hook up a DVD player in my kitchen to do it, right? I could just watch it on my little TV with a Chromecast hooked up to it, and that's pretty damn nice. So just because I own it physically doesn't mean that I won't also try and do something with its streamings from time to time. But Paramount Plus is not. We haven't had it long enough for us to kind of build that like necessity feeling with it yet. So I don't think it's going to last long.
Sejohn, you got to watch Tulsa King. You have Tulsa King and Lioness right now. Those
Tulsa
are like,
King is a good one. Yeah,
Tulsa King is fantastic.
The Mayor of Kingstown is the other one that
Mayor
I
of Kingstown is the other one that has Jeremy Renner. And then also Project Lioness, the Zoe Saldana one, is awesome. That show. Yeah. And that's 8 episodes and they go quick. Right. The first 2 episodes have some hard moments, but once you go through all of that, the rest of that story is just incredible. The levels and layers it goes to. Right. And also, I don't know how you feel about the Sonic movies, but if you have Paramount Plus, watch the Knuckles series.
Oh, yeah. No. I'm down on that. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about, is I just don't... We haven't had it long enough for me to really explore around yet, and, like, pay attention to what's been on it. And I've, honestly, pretty much ignored anything having to do with Paramount Plus other than what we talk about on the show, like, outside of it, because I didn't have the service, right? So...
So we'll have some other stuff to talk about. But God, Knuckles. I know that people had divisive opinions of it. We were just talking about it today. I ran some errands before I recorded. And, like, how good was Knuckles? Right? Like, now granted, I will say, your mileage may vary based upon how much you like the movie The Wizard. That's all I'm going to say about it. But, also, you know what? This isn't even like a spoiler. He's in the first episode. Julian Barrett shows up. So if you got any Boosh affinity in you, like friggin' Howard Moon is there.
Nice.
Right? You got Noel Fielding over there judging cakes on Netflix, and Julian Barrett doing what Julian Barrett do on friggin' the Knuckles series on Paramount Plus. And I'm talking like ACBC. I mean BCAD, like levels of Julian Barrett.
Nice.
Like, oh God, I'm so excited if you get to watch Knuckles. And then I guess since we're talking about like the cop procedural show, one of the police procedural shows I missed that we're getting back into, we're finally watching the 3rd season, is the Walker remake.
Yeah.
And that show, I mean, Jared Pilecki is doing a great job, and this season has been very interesting. But they did a Thanksgiving episode that literally made me look at the family and go, remember when this was a police procedural? Because they haven't, like, solved a crime in, like, 7 episodes. And then they did a freaking Thanksgiving episode. And I'm like, I guess, like, they're like, the crime doesn't matter in the show about Texas Rangers. So that's a good
Wild.
one. So the final thing that I want to do before we start talking about video games is we always ask for people to get in touch with us, send us information. We're not really horror guys. I mean, I know I'll watch a horror film, but I don't think I would ever classify myself as like a big fan of the horror genre. I don't want to speak for you, Sejohn, but I mean, we've seen a couple of horror movies together, but like, I don't think they're your favorite either. I don't want to...
It's not a very deep genre for me in terms of like the big thing about horror in general as a genre is that there are so many horror movies that come out nowadays. It is not like, hey, we've got around Halloween, we're going to have 2 or 3 that show up in theater. It is every month there is a new one out, and some people are into certain series and other series. And I can't get into the fandom at that level. I have always said on this show that like I can pick 1 or 2 a year that like I'm really going to dedicate myself to, but in general, I can't really dive into that genre as deep as some people do, because there are people that define their entire pop culture steez around that genre of film and comic and video game and all of that, right? Like horror is a whole horror, as we say in our Rhode Island accents.
Horror.
But like that, like those kinds of movies it takes a certain type of fan to really kind of call yourself a scary movie fan, right? Like there's a level at which people get into that I will never claim to be. That being said, I love me a good scary movie. I love me like some good behind the scenes stuff. Like if there's an interesting like writer or director that's really getting a lot of like a lot of buzz for a while, like I'll check out more than one of their film. Like I will get into it if there's a good hook. That's always my kind of my conceit is if there's a good enough hook on it, then yeah, I'm down. Like, a few years ago it was the Babadook, or there was that year where The Witch came out, and like people got really into that. So because
I'm sorry, do you mean the Vivitch?
The Vivitch, yeah. So like I'll get down on that. Or the Conjuring films, I have a very special place for in my heart because of its relationship to like New England and like the ways in which they get into the story of that family. And then like, in real life, those people were not necessarily the greatest people, but like in the movies, that couple is phenomenal to watch, right? Played expertly by Patrick Wilson and
Vera Farmiga.
Yes, Vera Farmiga, right? Yeah, so just like those, so there is definitely. I mean, like I'll get in on it, like, and then last year or 2 years ago was it with it was last year with the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, right? Like I got very into like following what was going on with that and whatever's going on with its sequels. But why did something come up?
So I mean, have you messed around with the Quiet Place films at all?
Oh, yeah. Again, I'm always down for a good hook, and there's a large part of my friend group that is involved in the ASL community, and so The Quiet Place is one of those movies that we actually have a lot of discussions about because of its use of and celebration of like ASL. And in fact, like there's been some news this year about how one of the big horror attractions at Universal Horror Nights is going to be a Quiet Place style haunted house that is going to have some escape room puzzly type elements to it, and a large part of it is that you are going to be assigned an ASL interpreter like come along with you to try and do some things. And I'm like a big fan of that series, weirdly.
Oh, cool. Well, I haven't seen any of them, and I blame my fact that I don't really like Jim from The Office, and that has sort of extended to the actor who plays Jim, which I had on the tip of my tongue, Jim Krasinski. John
Krasinski.
Yeah. So I'm like, I wasn't. First of all, the idea of a film. There used to be that joke when we were in college that the person who would survive a zombie apocalypse the best would be Devon Decker. Devon Decker would not survive A Quiet Place. Like, let's just be honest about it. Ripping off the Band-Aid, I would not survive. If I had to be quiet, I'm sorry, I'm already gone.
I mean, that is kind of the bit with the movie, is not many people do. This is not your kind of like zombie film where like there are cities full of people that are surviving. They're just like holding off like zombie horde. Like, people don't survive in these movies, and that is kind of what that whole first movie is definitely about. And with the sequel, which I will say I have not seen yet, I have not watched the second one yet, which is actually a prequel.
I think it's both, right? It's like,
right, yeah.
It's like Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again is the closest thing. Or I guess The Godfather Part 2 is a prequel sequel. We're talking about that in December. We're ripping that Band-Aid off. So one of our listeners, Hab Guy, he's from Canada, he was watching Quiet Place too, and he wrote up a little review that he sent to me because I was like, I'm not really interested in talking about A Quiet Place. So he's like, since we can't have a discussion, I sent you this review. And I enjoyed the review, and I asked him if I could read it on the show. So with your permission, I'd like to read this on the show, get a little bit of a North word on A Quiet Place Part 2, which is also interesting since neither of us have seen it, right? So everything that follows is based on Hab Guy, listener of the show, his review of A Quiet Place Part 2. This film has mostly great reviews, and I just don't understand the hype. Details that stand out like a sore thumb to me and drastically take away from the overall movie. It's not a horrible movie, but it certainly is not as good as every review had led me to believe. Having to be quiet seems to change throughout the movie. There's times the tiniest noise causes instant panic, knowing a creature will be there very shortly. Usually it's almost instantly a creature makes its presence known when a noise is made. In one scene, though, a character steps in a trap and screams out in pain, and that's already well after another noise trap had been tripped, but the creature doesn't appear for what seems like an eternity afterwards. Another detail that happens in most movies, and of course happened in this one, a 15-year-old character fires a shotgun with one hand and the firearm not resting the way you would want one to be resting on your shoulder while discharging a weapon. The noise the shotgun made was a simple pop noise, and there was no kickback at all. Even with the character being deaf, the pressure that is put out from discharging a firearm would still greatly affect the shooter. The movie does do a good job at making you care about the characters. Throughout the movie, I found myself hoping the main cast would survive. That being said, I never really had any feelings of actual dread when it came to the main characters. There were many situations they'd find themselves in that were dangerous, but never really had the feeling that they could actually fall and perish at any point. It always just felt like you knew they weren't going to kill off these characters, so somehow they're going to get out of this. They also had the stereotypical false finish. Just when you think they've made it to a safe area, all hell breaks loose, and one of the creatures takes out people in the now not so safe area. Finding the safe area never felt like they actually had found a safe area though. As soon as they got there, this sense of something bad is going to happen was always there. That could just be my own personal bias through watching mostly horror thriller movies though. The ending I did enjoy. They had a way to harm the creatures, but it was very localized, and the main character of the movie devised a way to make it more widespread, making it possible for people to be able to fight back. The ending also leaves some things to interpretation, makes you wonder what's going on with certain characters and where does the movie go from here. Overall, it was a decent movie, a movie that has a cool idea, but I found that a lot of the details and execution of things could have been done better. I will never see these movies, but I'm so thankful to Hab Guy for sending us this review, because now I have some idea of like what's going on in them. But it also seems like a really interesting dichotomy with like my issues with Twisters. Like,
I think maybe this gets into some of what you feel about Twisters too, but I think that this kind of leans into a lot of what I was saying about horror fans.
Yeah.
And that people get very invested in like a character, a franchise, a certain type of story that becomes kind of like their thing that they define themselves as fan-wise, and we all do this. I do this with comic books. I am not just a comic book fan. I am very more specifically a Batman fan, right? Like that kind of thing. If Batman's in a story, you better believe I'm going to pick it up. John Constantine as well, like right, like those are the kinds of things that like we have to do because we can't invest ourselves in all of it. But talking about this idea that people have been kind of rave reviewing this movie. I have gotten kind of both sides of that coin. I totally know what Hab Guy's talking about in terms of like people have just been kind of praising this film. I have heard that very much from the kinds of people that were already defining themselves as like Quiet Place fans. And it feels very much like this movie is hitting really right for them, which is cool, right? Like you want that to happen. But I have also heard people that have talked about them not getting it, and those people, interestingly enough, anecdotally, all of this is that they were not people that had seen the first one. They were people that, since the first one became huge and then a sequel was being put out, and very specifically, the sequel was straight to Netflix, wasn't it? Or at least in theaters for a second and then released on Netflix?
Yeah, it was one of those ones where we want to release it in theaters, but not everybody feels safe enough to go out to the theaters right now. So we want to make sure that we don't lose the audience on this. There
was an accessibility element to the second one that I think more people around me were able to kind of really get behind seeing it in a way that they weren't necessarily with the first one. But yeah, anyway, anybody that had not really been invested already kind of seemed to have these feelings of this movie is not a bad movie, but the ways that people are talking about this movie and the ways in which it's like reinventing certain tropes and stuff, I'm just not seeing it. It's not happening. So I feel like the rave review element of it is that a lot of like really big fans of the whole franchise really propping it up. I will say that the fact that there was not a counter wave, which is what we see a lot of the times nowadays, of people being like, well, because people like this movie so much, I'm going to hate this movie like just as much equally to balance it out. We didn't see a lot of that happen with it, which is cool because like generally that tells me that it is a pretty enjoyable experience when people do finally get their hands on it. They want to hate it and then they watch it and then they can't, right? That kind of attitude. So like I just, I appreciate to hear that there is definitely some good stuff in it, and I think I kind of had suspected that that was kind of where I was personally going to land as well. So I mean, if and when I do watch it, like we'll talk about it. The sequel is not as enticing to me as the first one was because the first one was so new and weird and different, right? Like, I mean, in addition to the whole idea of having to be quiet, the idea that they do have an actress in the film that is deaf and like ASL is the way that they communicate and they all learned it so that they could use it in the movie and like that became a huge part of it. Like that hook element that I was talking about that got me into it. Even if that is in the sequel, it's not new now, right? It's not fresh. It's not like a cool thing that this movie's doing that other movies have not done before. So it's not as impressive to me. I mean, it's still pretty fucking impressive. Like, I don't want to downplay the importance of that kind of work being done in films, even if they are sequels. It's just that in terms of getting my butt in a seat to watch a thing, the excitement level for the first one is just not there for the second one right now. But like I said, with Universal announcing that they're going to do this whole cool featurette with it in like real world, and like I have friends that are very much invested in seeing like things like ASL on screen and stuff like that, I'm sure that it'll eventually end up in front of me, and I'll be happy to watch it when it does. I'm just not making my effort to go and see it right now.
So the only reason I'm going to bring this up is because of what we were talking about before this whole spot in the show. I can't think of the word. Whatever.
Segment.
Segment. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word segment. Thank you, Sejohn. It released in theaters on May 28th, 2021, and then became available to stream on Paramount Plus 45 days after that theatrical debut. So you may have access to it now while you have Paramount Plus, if that is something that you were interested in jumping into.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, Hab Guy, for sharing your thoughts about A Quiet Place Part 2, especially since A Quiet Place Day 1 is a film that released this summer, right? So we're 3 years late to that one, but we like you sharing it. And also, if you have a review of a film, there's no guarantee that it's going to be read. We are going to read and make sure that it's not just like profanity laced or doesn't have any ulterior motives in it. You can always send them to thesayreport@gmail.com, or if you're part of the Discord, reach out to us and send to us via direct message. Like, this was fun. It was interesting showing, like, we talk about our feelings about movies, films, and television, video games all the time. So to have like a review from somebody who's not Devon or Sejohn, that it's an interesting way to see how other people take in media and what they affect, how they're affected by it. So again, thank you, Hab Guy. And if you want us to read your review on the show, try to keep it to about 500 words. And we'd love to have it from you. Which seems like a great time to transition over to video games. I played 3 new games since the last episode of the Say Report. How many new games did you play, Sejohn?
Yeah, probably in that vein. I would have to go back and take a look at my Steam. I'm doing a lot. The Steam Summer Sale was a couple of weeks ago or last week. The time is hard for me sometimes. So there's a couple of new games in my library that I've been poking at. They're not like big experiences, and I have not completed any of them by any stretch of the imagination. But like, there's a couple that I've had my hands on this week.
Awesome. That's excellent. Steam sale, I picked up games, mostly games that I had on other systems that I now wanted to play through again on PC with mods or other things like that. Because the Steam sale happened, the PlayStation Store summer sale kicked itself off again. So despite missing Street Fighter 6 and Yooka-Laylee: The Impossible Lair, I have those now. Nice. So I will be diving into Impossible Lair very shortly. I have a couple of other games I want to finish first. But the big game that I played on Steam this week was one called Fallen Leaf, which is kind of just like a platformer, kind of in the vein of something like Super Mario Brothers 3 would I think be the thing I'd define to, though with a little bit of Super Mario World in there. And I guess 3 is still that's weird.
There's a little bit of 2 slash Doki Doki. Is that the one that they covered?
Yeah,
No, what's
Doki
the
Doki
one that
Panic
they
is the
reskinned?
one that they
Yeah,
reskinned.
yeah, it is Doki. Yeah, there's a little bit of that in there too.
Yeah, it's a lot of that, and it's great because it is maps that you move along, and then you're sometimes given an option to go like up or right, and depending on which one you clear, you'll still wind up at the next level. Like you can go 1-3 or 1-4, and either one of them, once cleared, leads to 1-5. Which is like the Super Mario Brothers 3 of it all. But then there are also like hidden maps that you can find in levels that will open up secret paths. There's a little bit of the like side quest element, like fetch quest thing, like I need a golden parachute. And you give the guy a golden parachute and he's like, I guess you can have this old raggedy parachute. But then you go give that to like a gym and then the kids get to play under the parachute. So then you get like an extra heart piece or something like that. That doesn't happen in the game. There's just I don't know why my mind went to parachutes.
There's a little bit of like a Link's Awakening, like old Zelda element to that, right? Where it's like you can for the whole game you can do this trading quest and all it really gets you at the end is just like a heart piece.
Where this game, I will. So the big thing about Fallen Leaf is you start out as this character Leaf, and as you explore through the world, you can collect up to 9 additional playable characters, and the 9th one that you get is the 8th one that you get is an alien named Zuntz, and he has the most involved like trade quest that I have ever played in a game, and the best part about it is that it kind of requires you to go back all over the world to get the stuff. And even by the time you find where that trade quest starts, you don't have all the pieces. Like, you need to still go deeper into the game and then remember to come back. That was an engaging thing. And the character that you unlocked, like, he can strafe. So if you're shooting forward, you can walk backwards in a 2D platforming game. And you don't realize how helpful that can be in a video game until you have that option. Like, my biggest complaint about Fallen Leaf, other than the fact that there's still one achievement I can't find, which is to find a secret place in one of the levels, and I have gotten 100%, but have not found any of these secret places. It's a disappointment. I'm disappointed in myself. I'm not disappointed in the game. I'm disappointed in my lack of ability to find a secret place in these games. Just for the record. But one of those situations is, you start out with the character Leaf, and he's kind of like a Mega Man. He can slide. He has the ability to shoot a single projectile. But the definitive thing about this character is that he cannot move while shooting. He is stationary while he shoots. And you know I fucking hate that, right? I have complained about that in video games forever. I want to be able to move while I'm shooting. That's a Devon Decker complaint. But then by like the 3rd level, you find his sister out in the world and she joins the party. You cannot play the game and miss his sister. A lot of the other characters, you have to do some sort of quest or find where they are to get them to join your team. But Petal, Leaf's younger sister, you get her like 3rd or 4th level. It's been a while since I've played the start of the game. And she jumps higher. She has like a little drone buddy named Pollen. He's a bumblebee, and he will like home in on enemies and attack them. So even though she's a little bit weaker than Leaf, like her utility is so much greater. So as soon as you get a character who's not the main character, you don't really play as the main character ever again. And that is a little disappointing, especially like you find a cyborg like primate. They're called Priminians, and he is essentially Leaf, but he can move while shooting. And even though his shots are a little bit weaker, the ability to shoot and move at the same time against boss fights that are like kind of like avoid a bunch of projectiles, like it's worth that trade-off. So like that's like, my other complaint about this game is the game was developed by 3 dudes, right? 3 guys got together and said, let's make a video game. They've been working on the game since 2011, so 13 years before this game comes out. The pixel art is beautiful. The way they made sure that they tested it so that I have not hit any hard or soft locks. There is legitimately a game you play within the game that has all sorts of speedrun tech in it, and you have to actually find somebody who will teach you that speedrun tech to complete the challenge associated with it, which is to get the world record clear in the game. Which, I love that type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But, in that one, it's the walls don't have hit collection, so you can just run through walls if you have enough speed. That's one of the hints you're given. I didn't run into any of that in the main game. They were so confident in the fact that their game was well built without any of those, glitches or bugs that they kind of mock it within their own game when games are rushed and have that. So I haven't had anything of that, but a lot of the discussion is that people it's too easy. You need difficulty modes, an easy, normal, and hard. There's no punishment for dying. Why do I start? Why are there so many checkpoints? Start me back at the beginning of the game. Oh, there's too many characters. It's unwieldy. All of these complaints, and because they're just three guys, they're addressing all of the complaints. And I wish that in modern games, you could just finish a game and release it and then let the game exist for a little bit. I will admit the first version of the game, you could not take screenshots on Steam, right? They messed up the code for that. So F12 did not take screenshots of the game, but they fixed that within an hour of the game being released.
I mean, there are some games that release that do that purposefully. So,
yeah, exactly. Right. Vampire Survivors, you have to choose to have the Steam UI active. And I don't have it because I'd have so many. I have a bunch of Vampire Survivor screenshots anyway that are I used my phone or I used a snipping tool. If I could take screenshots of Vampire Survivors, that's all that would be on my hard drive. I will be the first person to admit that. But I just feel kind of...
Devon doesn't have somebody to come over and erase all of his porn. It's just all
dude,
screenshots.
If something happens to me, you got to get to my computer. You got to erase all the Vampire Survivor pictures that I have. Oh, they're no, you just got to get rid of them. It's not...
It's nothing... It is an embarrassment of riches.
There's nothing bad in there. There's nothing lascivious. It's just if people knew that I had over 3 terabytes of Vampire Survivor screenshots, that people would talk. And I don't want that to happen.
I will say this conversation about just making a game and walking away, right? It's part of why Larian Studios that did Baldur's Gate 3 is getting a lot of kind of residual praise for having this attitude at a AAA level of yeah, we're not really going to do DLC. We're moving away from Baldur's Gate. That's not going to be our next game. We're not really interested in dragging this out, right? And that's a game that hit fucking huge last year. And for the development team to just be yeah, we're cool, we're really happy with what it's done, and we're really happy to talk to people about the choices that we made, but we're not gonna touch that game. There's been a couple of major visual updates that have come out that aren't even necessarily on Larian's side of things. There's a lot of stuff that has come out on the Steam side of things, specifically with the Steam Deck, that has really pumped up some graphics for people that people are just oh my god, this update is making this game look great again. And it's yeah, that isn't even anything Larian did. But it is what makes it so unique to hear that kind of comment, right? Is yeah, we're done. We're not going to touch this. We're going to walk away and give it some time to breathe on its own as it exists. And that is such a rare thing in video games now that it becomes newsworthy when somebody says that they're going to do that.
Yeah, and I kind of wish just let the game release. People are clearly playing it, right? I've been watching streams of people play the game, and I 100% it in the first day that it came out. I had a stomach bug, and I'm I'm just gonna play this game, right? I have nowhere else to be other than the bathroom occasionally when my body's hey, let's just eject everything inside of us right now. So I've eaten saltines and playing the game, got the 100%, and then watching streams of it, and these 3 guys are going and watching people play, and they're just lurking. And then when people do something big, they're hey, all 3 of us, we developed the game, and they talk to them, and it's really kind of sweet to watch that, right? It's wholesome. It is wholesome content. But then you see, and granted, like, there's always going to be people who have complaints about things. We at the Say Report, we complain about things, right? But we're not going up to Steven Spielberg's house and being like, "Hey, I have a problem with this," right?
You need to change it. You need to make an active change to what you're doing. Yeah.
Picking characters is clunky. Yeah, yes it is, but like you can also just pause the game and choose the character that you want. I'm sorry that the quick select, you go through all the characters, but like people demanding like you should be able to deactivate characters. And it's like that's a big ask from like the developer. Do you know what that means on their side to do that?
With not much major benefit on the user side. Like what a wild, that is so, let me put it this way, would not be high priority even if it was a team of 30 people working on this game. If it was a 300 person Apex level style team working on this, I still think that would not be a high priority ask for a thing, right?
Like imagine like Mega Man, like, hey, Mega Man X, let me arrange the weapons in the order that I want to cycle through them. No, would be the response from Capcom. Learn the order of them. And, like, I was talking with some other people about this, like, well, that kind of, like, sounds vaguely like Get Good sort of territory where you're at with that. And I'm like, no, but, like, that's not what it is.
No.
It's like the game exists as the game exists. Like,
they're asking for it to be more Get Good is what it sounds like.
Yeah, well, there's those other one people, too, that, like, I don't want that. And also, like, just learn when you go right who the next character is. Like, they did what they could like with the limitations. Is beautiful 8-bit art, and like the humor is really funny. There's the Coast Crabs, who are a takeoff of the Beach Boys, and one of them is named Bryant Gilson, and I've been singing Lion in Sand just like Brian Gilson did all week.
Nice.
Like,
dumb. So good. Dumb joke. I like it.
Yeah, it's good, like humor, like it's not too cloying or anything like that. Like the world feels full and that, and for people to be like the game's too easy, and I'm like, sometimes games are easy, right? This is a game that I enjoyed, and I'm like, let's see the speed run viability of this game. So I rushed through the first like 7 levels. It took me 23 minutes. And that is just like going to the goal, not searching for anything. And I'm like, and I was going fast. Like I knew them. Like it was like 1 minute clear times of all these levels. And I'm like, but all the other stuff around it, like this is meant to be kind of an immersive platforming experience. Think Shovel Knight. But then people are like, but it's not as hard as Shovel Knight. And it's like, well, maybe your younger brother wants to play Shovel Knight, right? Maybe your kid's sister wants to play Shovel Knight. But, like, Shovel Knight's too hard for them. Here's Fallen Leaf. like, here's an option for them. That they...
Yeah. Maybe your host companion wants to play Shovel Knight.
Yeah, maybe, right, yeah. Oh, Sejohn, I'm sorry. Have you finished Shovel Knight ever? Or
I don't think I've ever finished it, but that was not a difficulty thing. That was more of a like losing interest, I guess, because of difficulty was not the only reason that I played 30 hours of Shovel Knight. It's not like I didn't play Shovel Knight, right? Like it just wasn't a game that, it's not the kind of game that engages me to the point where I need to finish it. Honestly, I'm getting more into Shovel Knight Dig than I ever did into Shovel Knight. All right, and like
and I think like the roguelite nature of that may like. There's a reason to keep playing Shovel Knight Dig, or when you play Shovel Knight, you'll hit a wall. Like I remember after I had cleared the game and I was like trying to go through, Shovel Knight was one of those things, like this is what we talk about a lot on the show too, which is interesting in Fallen Leaf, because Fallen Leaf doesn't give the option. The game presents itself as itself. But we talk about things like in Shovel Knight, you can break the checkpoints. And you get more reward for that, right? You get money for breaking the checkpoints, but it means that if you die, you go all the way back to the start of the level, right? Or to the last checkpoint that you activated.
And when you say break, you mean you can literally, as the character, destroy the checkpoints, and it gets you a really big prize if you complete. But if you don't, then that
like it's high risk, high reward.
Right.
So
Right.
it
It's
gives you
not
that
just
option.
you don't just mean like break the game, break the checkpoints. Like it is encouraged in game as a mechanic to try this.
Yeah, they specifically tell you if you want to destroy checkpoints, you'll get a reward for it, but understand that it means you don't have that checkpoint.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like that's the thing. So I always talk about like option in video games, like give people the option to make the game harder. But then I also think about Fallen Leaf, and I'm like, Fallen Leaf gives you the option to make the game harder. Play through the entire game as Leaf. Don't use any of the other characters.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Finding
Don't collect
challenges
the
within games
power-ups,
is a fun thing to
like-
do for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Like specifically, like one of the big things is every level has a P-man in it, and that's a P-man, like a human, but it's a P. I hate them,
Yep,
and I love them at the same
fantastic.
time. And if you collect all of them, then the mother stalk will grow to the sky. And if you defeat the mother stalk, you get a pretty great upgrade. But here's the other thing. Okay, think about this, right? How many games you play where you get an upgrade, you have that fucking upgrade, and that's how the game plays now. Every single upgrade in this game can be triggered on or off. Right? You collect 8 P-men, you get a thing that like reduces knockback.
Yeah.
You just don't. So first of all, maybe just don't collect the P-men, right? Because they give you the stuff that like makes the game less challenging. Right?
I mean, yeah, I think we've talked about this with Breath of the Wild, right? And
Yeah.
and Tears of the Kingdom. Like not using Korok seeds to upgrade your inventory is like a way some people choose to play that game, right? Or like not finding certain armor, or not bothering to equip certain armor, so that they have to do more challenging things here or there. Yeah, I love it when a game can have that level of complexity. But I also recognize that like A, not every game can have it, and B, like the second that every game has it, it's no longer an interesting thing that Shovel Knight does. It's no longer an interesting thing that Tears of the Kingdom does. Like if every Zelda game going forward was just more Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, the magic of what those games are compared to the rest of the franchise would go away, would disappear, right?
You need the darkness to appreciate the light. Is kind of how I always talk about that, right? So it's not like one of the things, but if the light were everywhere, then we would come to take the light for granted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Every game has it. And that's sort of what these like complaints about Fallen Leaf seem like. It's like it's not like every other platforming game I've played in the last 10 years. So like what's up with that? And he's like, well, we made our own game. We made the game that we wanted to make. And I have to say, watching streamers play the game without that huge upgrade from collecting all of the P guys for the final fight, like I'm like, I kind of want to go do the final fight again. Without that upgrade on. I kind of want to go through the game and not get any of the P guy upgrades because of the fact that, like, not having knockback. I mean, look at something like Curse of the Moon, right? The veteran mode has knockback, but the beginner mode does not have knockback. So just shut off that upgrade, and then the game will become harder, right? They gave you the tools. I'm so glad that, like, we got to this point, because, like, yeah, no, the tools are in the game to have a more challenging experience.
Yeah.
And people are still going to the devs and being like, but it's not how I want the game to be challenging.
I mean, so just like a peek behind the curtain before we started the episode, Dev had me pull up the discussion page for this game just so that I could have a little bit of an idea of like what some people were saying about it. And I think specifically to this conversation, there is nothing more emblematic of exactly this issue than on the third page under a review of somebody from June of 2023. They're talking about the demo and demo alone and spend a good portion of the beginning of their review talking about how they don't want the character to just stop and shoot. Clearly indicating that they did not get to, as they only seem to have just played the demo, did not really get into the idea of other characters being playable. So like when their whole thing is like, this is great, but like, why do I have to stop as I shoot? Which is something that you said, Devon, but as you were quick to point out, you then get a character that doesn't behave, or characters that don't behave that way, so you can change the game in that regard. Like, the game is giving you the choice to do that. But this person is not aware, not digging deep enough before they then get on Steam and put this thing out there that now kind of like anybody responding to it is like, you don't have to play as that character.
Yeah.
Congrats.
I mean,
and now this review is up there and posted for eternity for these people to be looking at. Great move.
the demo gives you time to play with Petal as well. Like the demo, this was one of those demos that I was a really big fan of because it took you through to the second boss fight in the first world, which is like a giant snake that is infected by evil magic. And once you do that, they're like, your save progress will transfer over when the game releases. Like the demo's going to go away, but like this demo wasn't a waste of your time. We appreciate you playing these 8 levels of our game. So if you buy the game, you'll pick up from here. And that was awesome. Because then like it gave me incentive to keep playing and exploring those levels to make sure that my characters were where I wanted them to be when I picked the game back up.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was, but you're not wrong. Like, and Petal, like she also stops to shoot, but she does have the bee that is mobile while she is stopped to shoot. So they like, yeah, you bring up a really good point about that. I don't know.
It's just it's pretty emblematic of, I think, exactly this thing that you're talking about, of people not wanting to, they want it to look and feel a very specific way, either whether that's based on a game that they want or a dream that they had. They have a very specific idea of what they want the game to be doing, while seemingly ignoring the stuff that the game is already doing to kind of do that for them, to help to be there for them in that way. And that's a lot of criticism that you get nowadays when it comes to online communities. You know, when you're taking people's just like anecdotal experiences on what they're doing in these games, and people talk about this a lot with video game criticism, specifically not like major written reviews, but rather like community review. Like, you know, when you're trying to find a game, you go to a subreddit, you look up a discussion on it, right? There's always seemingly this moment where you're reading a bunch of reviews about a thing and that you're just kind of like, you're not quite able to put your finger on why you disagree with. And then eventually you hit that moment where you realize like, oh, because this person is just not doing this part of this game. Like, as somebody that plays this game and is loving it, this person is just completely ignoring this part of the game and like complaining about how it's not there. And you're just like, wait a minute, like this person's basically playing a different game than I am.
Right. Well, but then also, like, to talk about that was from the demo last year. The top thing on the discussion is someone being like, the main character, like, why is his projectile needs to be reevaluated? Because once you get the character who can move and shoot, it just feels more natural. And it's like, so then just don't play as the other character.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I don't know much about this game in terms of like narrative. Does it like break like narratively if you're not playing as Leaf in certain moments?
Nope.
Or something like that?
Any story moment. This is an huge praise for this, right? Any story moment that happens, that Leaf and Petal show up for the story moment, and then if you were playing as someone besides Leaf or Petal, they're also present. So like Paula, she's like a Felinian, she's like a cat girl that's in the game. I used her primarily because she was like kind of like Link, right? She uses like sword slashes. She slashes with her claws. So it's more like a melee focused, not like projectile based. So more like Shovel Knight or something like that, right? Because you have to get up close and personal to the enemies. And because of that, she does more damage, right? So again, risk reward playing with a more melee themed character as opposed to almost every other character is projectile based, right? If I got to a point where a story thing happened, out of like just like in an RPG, from the Paula character, Leaf and Petal would step out and step forward so that they're interacting with the stuff, but then the character that I'm playing as is also present, right? Like it's very much like Paula is a mercenary in the just simplest terms. She's like, I'll come with you for 2,000 gems. And it's like, fine, I'm gonna hire you. Or like other characters, it's like, oh, you found this for me, I'm gonna join you. Or you beat me in a race. You guys must be cool. Let's go on an adventure. Like, you earn all of them, and it feels very much like they're an important part of the team. Like, we're all in this together. Because the big thing about Fallen Leaf is that Leaf and Petal are orphans, right? Tale as old as time, literally. And so they, like, treasure hunt to try to make money. And one day, Leaf opens a treasure chest and releases this horrible evil onto the world. But also with the evil, they release the wizard who trapped that evil. And it turns out that they are the descendants of that wizard. And so many of the characters that join the party end up being in some way connected to that wizard character, so that by the end of the game, you haven't just developed a cast of characters, you've almost formed this family of people so that they're not alone in the world anymore.
That's awesome. That's a fantastic narrative. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's, oh, okay. And then at the very end, spoilers for Fallen Leaf, after you've completed the game, that wizard finally joins your team. And then it's like, in order to do the final level, we need at least 10 members in our party. And now, like, he was my 10th member, so that felt good, so I just got to go to it. But then, like, also, if you haven't found people, it's incentive to go back and find these essential members of your family. Yeah. Like, it's kind of a cool, like, not risk reward, I've been saying that too much, but it's like a good narrative loop and reason to keep playing the game. Like, and I don't care about fantastic story in video games, right? Like, historically, Devon Decker doesn't need a good story to enjoy a good game. But, like, this game had really slick mechanics. Every character felt unique. And on top of that, I had a story that, like, by the end of it, like, was really good. Like, I don't want to spoil, like, all of the twists and turns that happen throughout this story. Like, because it gets to, like, some serious, like, looking at the face of God type stuff.
Yeah, this feels like some good, like, Suntropics, like, Chrono Trigger, like, stuff going on, story-wise, at least, and some of the cool elements. Yeah. So,
really enjoyable. And it just, like, it's kind of, like, marred by all these people being like, but it's not the game I want it to be 100%. And it's like, but no game is, right? Like...
Yeah, no, I mean, people really do need to take a moment to really consider what they're bringing to the table when they go into these things too. And I don't think enough people are when they have these kinds of conversations. You know, I just I don't know. But you're talking about all this like story stuff and building up teams and stuff, and it's making me itchy to go back and keep going on my 1,000-Year Door play, because like I've also been playing a lot lately with that game in particular, with who you have present for story beats and cutscenes, because it does switch the dialogue up for them a little bit. For anybody that has not played 1,000-Year Door or a Paper Mario game in the past, the companion system in 1,000-Year Door, that's in a few of the other ones as well, you are able to have one companion out at a time, and you have a selection of companions that grows as the game goes on. And each companion has unique abilities that help you kind of navigate around certain puzzle elements and things like that. But like, for instance, there's a Yoshi that you can pick up, and he's got like a rad, like, bad dude attitude that's like really fun for some scenes. There's a Koopa that you get on your team, and he's kind of like really timid, so he'll have different types of dialogue in certain situations. With like there's a level that I just finished off where that's the spooky level, right? Like, you know, everybody's still really sweet and innocent because it's Paper Mario, so like everybody's really cool, but they're also ghosts, they're also like zombie-esque characters, or scarecrows come to life type stuff, or like all sorts of silly stuff like that. But having Koops out, the Koopa that is like this like super like timid, shy Koopa, in these moments he's like stuttering to get lines out. Whereas like if you have the Yoshi out, he's just like, yo, who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Like, it's, you know, so depending on kind of the beats that you want, it actually becomes really important for me in certain moments to have certain characters out with me, right? Because I want to hear what they have to say on those situations. And I'm super invested in every member of my team, like, because I really do think there are certain beats where I'm like, oh, I really want to make sure that I have, the very first partner you get is a young Goomba researcher who she's just like,
she's the best. I love her so much.
Well, and she becomes hugely important from a mechanic standpoint, because one of her special abilities is literally just to tell you what you're supposed to be doing next. So if you ever have a moment where you're just like, I'm not really clear on exactly where I'm supposed to be going to figure this out, you just pull her out, hit her special ability, and she's like, well, according to my research, we should be making sure that we're in this part of the world, and that we're talking to this type of person or finding this type of character. And it's just enough information to be like, oh, okay, I need to go 3 screens this way and talk to the old man, and that will get me going again. It's not so much like, hey, this is what we're supposed to be doing, go do this, but more like, this is a pretty obvious hint about where we need to go, right? So she's a phenomenal like character to pull out for those elements, but she's also pretty weak when it comes to the fighting. So she's not necessarily the one I always have out in that regard. But I did find myself in a fight the other day where I was just like, she's not the best character to have in a fight. But she is probably the best character to have in this fight because when the fight ends, I want her to be the one in the cutscene with me. And like that alone kind of introduced this whole element of, but I have to be really careful with now with what I do with my partner moves and stuff like that because she's just not the strongest one, and she has a physical attack, which is important in this game because certain creatures that are cannot necessarily be jumped on, cannot necessarily be touched, right? So if she has a physical attack and we're fighting one of those creatures, then she's probably going to stick to doing items, or she's going to stick to getting the crowd going because there's a whole crowd element to the fight mechanics in this one too. So like she's still useful there. I just have to rethink the ways in which I use my partner because I don't want her to get damaged just for jumping on a character that has spikes on its head, you know?
Yeah. No, I do. She is fantastic. And what you're talking about having characters and scenes, that's one of the biggest points of contention I've seen with this game.
With Leaf or with Fallen Leaf?
With Paper Mario.
Oh,
We're talking about Paper
yeah,
Mario. Yeah, we Fallen Leaf. Like I recommend it. Everybody, it's on sale through Tuesday or the 22nd, so Monday. So if you're listening to this early on Monday, it's before like noon Eastern. You can still get it for like $14. That's the end of the Fallen Leaf stuff. Moving over to Thousand Year Door. Have you gotten the Babam character yet?
I am. That is where I'm at.
Okay,
I have just
excellent.
picked him up, and we are on our way to. Yeah, we just crashed on Keel Hall Key for
Nice.
anybody that is keeping note. Yeah.
One of the things that they changed about him is there's a certain cutscene where no matter what, you like fall asleep during it. But of all the characters, he stayed awake for it. And it's someone like talking about their journeys and their adventures, the type of stuff that sailors sit around in pubs getting drunk and sharing stories. So of course he would stay awake for it. And one of the changes they made in the Switch re-release is that he also falls asleep. And it's like, and it's just so like, oh, like it was like, it sort of reminds me of like Final Fantasy II, where the one developer was like, oh, like 1,000-year-old magic is not going to hold a candle to modern day magic. So I'm going to make it so this spell you're literally searching for the whole game is a dud. And then you realize, no, the power is that what we've done along the way to get here. That should be enough to stop this dark
Power
lord.
is the power we made along the way.
Yeah. And then in every re-release of Final Fantasy II, they make that Ultima weapon such an ultimate weapon. And it's like, but that was such a cool narrative thing that one of the original programmers of Final Fantasy II was like, you know, like if I found a 500-year-old gun, it probably wouldn't do the same amount of damage as like a modern day gun.
This feels this feels like kind of though it's in that realm of a beneficial mistake. I'm trying to think of a better word for it, but like
a feature, not a bug.
Yeah. But like with quotes around that, right? Because
Yeah.
that is something that a developer will say when something just kind of works out in their favor, right?
Yeah.
We didn't mean for this to be this way, but it's actually kind of cool that it does. When they do these remakes and these revisits, I think it's an interesting question from from a standpoint from the history aspect, which is a huge thing for me, like archiving the actual history of these games. Like, do you fix that now that you know that you have the ability to? Is fixing it admitting that it was never a feature, right? Like, there's an element of kind of discussion there that I love, and I hate that changes like that get made sometimes, but I do think that it is important for then people to then talk about it when they do. And I hope that people are given or have some really solid opinions about the fact that
that Bobbery
that
falls asleep now.
That Bobbery falls asleep in certain element. Like that's going to be the big thing that people get pissy about. Good for them. Good.
Like I like that. Like that's
going that
one
well,
of the complaints.
that this is the thing that you're upset about.
Yeah, it's I think it's very funny because especially like you want to see how these people react, and that was always something like it stuck with me too because I'm like, yeah, of course he'd stay awake, right? He's loving hearing this sea story from this character because he rides the sea too, and I almost wonder if it was one of those things where like they just didn't think to give him a different status there. We just apply the status to all of the characters during this cutscene.
Right.
But talking about Paper Mario and wanting to see interactions, that was always one that I enjoyed, especially as somebody who's like lived on the sea and interacted with those types of people. Like it felt true to life, not just true to like the characterization.
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's why I do a podcast, right? I assume everybody wants to hear my fishtails. So I said I played a couple other games, and talking about those biases that you bring in, right? Nintendo World Championship NES Edition.
Oof.
I had a fucking roller coaster ride with this game.
Yeah, talk to me about it, because when you and I were first talking about it, you were not having a great time with that game.
You know, it's so important that I'm going to do it. I have it and my Switch Lite, but it fucking sucks on Switch Lite. I think it might fucking suck overall, at least as a single-player experience. I'll reserve judgment until I can play it docked and the multiplayer mode. You are the first person I have shared these feelings with. Because,
your exact words.
My exact words to you, because it was one of those situations where, first of all, I took off the Friday, because we're going to have stuff going on in the house, so it was, like, nice to have a day knowing that, like, I don't have work, I don't need to worry, I'll take this Friday off. But I also thought that Nintendo World Championship released on the 19th. I thought that Twisters and NWC was the same day. And it turns out it came out on Thursday. So my whole plan to have the day off to play this game and see Twisters was kind of had a wrench thrown in it, essentially. So I had to go to work, but I brought my Switch Lite with me, and I'm like, I have, 90 minutes of breaks that I'm supposed to take throughout the day. I'll play the game in little chunks. And that first 15 minutes that I played the game, that was my reaction. And one of the main things, the biggest issue that I have with Nintendo World Championship, which is mostly a digital game, there are physical editions available. They are double the price. What you get are 16 art cards that are the cover art, 13 art cards that are the cover art of the 13 games that have challenges in the game. And then on the back, it's just like a sprite from each of them that kind of indicates the game. The one that sticks with me is the Lost Levels, because I'm super happy that the Lost Levels has representation in this after falling in love with it in 2023. And the back of it is Luigi kind of doing like his skid stop. And so, like, it feels good. Kirby, it's him overeating when he's, like, ate something bigger than himself and he can't swallow it. Like, they're fun little things that are there in art cards. You get 5 pins for Super Mario Brothers, Legend of Zelda, Metroid, Donkey Kong, and a Nintendo World Championship logo pin. And you get a gold NES cartridge that is just for display purposes only. I showed it to a friend, and they're like, "Oh my god, the game also can be played on NES?" And I'm like, "No, that would be awesome, but that is not how the game works." Right, I'm sorry. So that's what you get in the physical edition. I bought the physical edition because I wanted to see everything that came with it. I wanted to see the value of it. Also, I wanted a physical edition of the game. Like I'm still one of those people who, like, I like that I can take this physical copy of the game and give it to my sister to play. Or, like, I let other friends borrow it now that I've completed all of the challenges, right?
Well, God forbid you own more than one Switch in your lifetime and you want to play it on a different system.
Exactly, right? But all I had was the Switch Lite, and the biggest complaint that I have with this is there's no tutorial at all. You are forced to go into speedrun mode. You set up a profile for yourself, then you're forced to go into speedrun mode, and you're forced to do the first challenge, which is to collect the mushroom in 1-1 of Super Mario Brothers. Then once you do that, the rest of the game kind of opens itself up to you. But never does it tell you that the default screen that we show to you, which is your gameplay in a small window on the left side of the screen, and your PB, your best clear, on the right side of the screen, and all of that, both of them are smaller, right? So then imagine playing on a Switch Lite, like, even less of the screen real estate is available to you in this default view that they give you. If you go into the options, you can hide your PB screen, which then the game fills up a more substantial amount of the screen.
Yeah.
And, like, it's easier to play. And it's actually a little bit more fun to play. So, like, the fact that there's no talk about that. The other complaint that I am hearing that I will give full credence to is that there is no way to remap the controls in the game. They are NES games. B is B, A is A. And I don't know how often you've used, like, a Switch Pro controller or a Joy-Con. That is not as natural as B and A on an NES controller, right? Like a lot of NES games, for that B and A moment to feel more natural, Y and B become B and A respectively, right? And now I know that the Switch is this wonderful device where you can remap any button to be any button, but it would be really nice, especially since something like Super Mario 35 did it, that if you could map it so that Y is B and B is A.
Right.
Like, in the game, you could choose to switch that. I mean, friggin' Super Mario All-Stars did that 30 years ago. They gave you that option, right?
Well, and like changing up controller modes is something that has been in games for 30 years now. Like,
yeah,
it's just with that is a feature that has been available more times than we can count. And like, yeah, I mean, like, this kind of gets to some of the stuff we were talking about with Fallen Leaf, of like demanding stuff be in a game and like that changing the element of it. But like, this is behind the scenes in a way that some of that stuff just isn't. And also, there's an accessibility element to this as well that is really sad is not being addressed, right? Like, there's just certain ways that people, it's a bummer. It is definitely a bummer.
Like, I'm not going to demand it, right? Honestly, I think they should have, if you're getting the physical one, included one of the NES controller style Joy-Cons. That's how I've been playing the game.
That would have been cool.
And that has been awesome. And in Japan, you got 2 of them. They had the special edition came with 2 of the Famicom style Joy-Cons, which, like, that's awesome, right? That is immersive, and that really leans itself to it. And also, then almost everybody who's playing the game, right? Because it has an online element, right? It has a World Championship edition where you compete, and then the goal to unlock a pin, because pins are like the unlockables in the game, is to place in the top 20 percentile. So right now, in the 5 challenges, I have S rank in 4 of them, and I'm like right at the cusp of getting S rank in the Metroid one. I was labbing it out before we started recording.
Does that mean this game's going to get harder as history goes on?
I think it is. Yeah, I mean, it already has,
wild.
Like, it has survival mode, which is like Fall Guys, but with the challenges in the game. You go from 8 to 4 to 2, and the silver mode, pretty accessible right now for me, right? Like, I can win in survival silver without much difficulty. My only win in survival gold was because me and the other guy tied in the final event.
Wow.
That is how, like, tenths of a second.
Yeah, I'm okay with this kind of idea of this ever-growing difficulty with this particular piece of video game like history because that is exactly what it's selling itself as. Yeah. Like, the idea that in 5 years we could actually look at this game and say, yes, we do in fact have a Nintendo World Champion to look at is like pretty awesome. I think that's a great little element of this particular game that I don't necessarily think will work in any other game out there. But like, this idea of ever-growing difficulty and us actually separating the wheat from the chaff, right? Like,
it really stimulates the parts of my brain that were stimulated by Super Mario 35. Right. Like, and that is the highest praise I can give this game. Like, the fact that the challenges range from beginner to legend in each of the games. So it goes from like beginner, hard, master, legend. I think that's how they break out. The legend challenge for Super Mario Brothers, right? The original Super Mario Brothers game is to do the Warp Zone speed run. That is what that is, and that's sick. That's awesome. Like that, and it's like almost kind of disappointing that, like, yes, that's the fastest clear time, and that I think they may have passed the 4:55 barrier. I think that someone got a 4:54 like just very recently. And also, like, if you were able to do everything correct, I think the best possible time might be able to get pushed down as low as 4:52. So, like, it's not a crazy ask for people. And honestly, clearing it in, like, 6 minutes got me the S rank. And that felt pretty good. And it's not like playing the actual game, where if you die, it just kind of rewinds you back to before you died. It's not like a death brings you back to the start of the level. There's some, quality of life stuff to make the game more accessible for people. And, these are people who've never played these games, right? Like, even in the beginning, they're like, you might not have been able to experience one of these Nintendo World Championships events in person, and that could have been just difficulty and distance, or the fact that you weren't born yet. Like, they admit that right on the tin. And that's cool. And so, like, for Dale, a Nintendo World Championship did not happen in her life until, I think, 2019. Right? Because I know they do them now, right? With, like, Splatoon and things like that. Smash Brothers and stuff. They've started doing NWCs again. But, like, those original ones, like, you know, to talk about the Wizard, like Video Armageddon at the end of the Wizard, those were you had to go to the event. They weren't televised or anything like that, right? It's why somebody like, and I know that he's not respected right now, but like Dr. Disrespect, part of his whole like character was that he won 2 Nintendo World Championships, right?
Right.
I mean, he's a fucking asshole at this point, right? Everything that's come out about him. But like he could say that, and it was one of those things where like, oh, he can't really prove that he didn't, right?
Yeah, no, this is not like a questionable win type situation like where with what's his nuts over with Donkey Kong, Mitchell, Billy Mitchell.
Billy Mitchell, yeah.
But no, like we do know that this person did in fact actually do these things, and that's something that we'll all have to just kind of footnote every time we talk about those. But yeah.
So I mean, so that's a whole part of it. So I'll say, like, now that I've done the multiplayer is excellent. We got some people together at the house, we played through it, and I will quote. It's Claude's wife who said this. I don't have her permission to say her name on the show. I've never asked her for it. I'm sure she'd give it to me. But Claude's wife's like, I enjoy this because I feel like I can actually compete with you. Because she was beating me in, like, Super Mario Bros. 3 challenges. Like, which is not a game I play all the time, right?
Yeah.
So that was fun. But there is a little bit of disappointment in the fact that, like, the legendary challenge for Super Mario Brothers is to complete the game, essentially. And then the legendary challenge for, say, Super Mario Brothers 2 is to beat the first level of Super Mario Brothers 2. Like, those two things are not on the same level.
I wonder though, timing wise, if there's I don't know. There's definitely some other elements there. It feels more like those kinds of achievements are historical in and of themselves.
Yeah.
Right. Like that is a thing that I think that we have seen other championships ask of people and things like that. So like they're interesting to have that kind of element of the history to it. But then putting them next to each other, you start to really realize how one of these things is not like the other. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the original Nintendo World Championship was collect 50 coins in Super Mario Brothers, and then it would go over to Rad Racer, which was complete a lap of Rad Racer, and then it was however much time you had left to play Tetris for the highest score. Right? And you had like 20 minutes to do that. So it's a cool way that they modified it to be sort of like, I mean, Fall Guys is what it feels like because they have that survival mode where like the top 4 people move on. But it is also like NES Remix or WarioWare, where they're not super long challenges. The thing that bothers me the most about the experience, because I've gotten past the fact of like the screen is small. Well, you know, when I'm on a dock and I'm on like, we played on a 70-inch TV yesterday, the screen is not small, right? Like I can see everything right now. I'm using the NES Joy-Con, so I'm not having the issue of the remappable controls, right? Some people are saying they like blurry. I don't get that, right? The game looks fine to me. And I'm someone who plays a lot of older games. Maybe I'm just used to that blurriness that they're talking about. But, you know, they're pixelized games from the 1980s, guys.
Yeah.
Like, it's not Baldur's Gate 3. Or I don't know what like the newest hotness is. Like God of War Ragnarok maybe had good visuals. I don't know, whatever. But yeah, like so that's all cleared out. And then the multiplayer stuff, excellent. But also the single player, once you complete all of the challenges, you unlock the legendary challenge, which is do all 13 legendary challenges one right after another. And that finishes with the Super Mario Brothers challenge. So, like, that feels like that's going to be a big deal someday. Right? And that, I mean, it took me, I got through it in 31 minutes, and I felt really good about that. Because some of the games suck. I'm just going to be honest about that. Excite Bike sucks. Balloon Fight sucks. Ice Climber sucks. Like,
you are upsetting some people right now, I will tell you that.
This is my opinion in these games. They're games that I can play, right? But they're not like, it's not like Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's, I don't know. It's been a good time. Oh, yeah, that's like one, like, Super Mario, the Lost Levels. Like, it's like beat 1-1 is the Legend Challenge. But then, like, one of the challenges is to, like, clear 8-2, which is the one where you have to find the hidden beanstalk to move forward. Like,
Right.
it's just, like, some weird stuff that's going on there. I don't know. It's fun. It's a fun time playing this stuff. Oh, here's the thing. So that, like, clear 1-1 of Super Mario Brothers, most people are going down the fourth pipe. If you don't know, you go down the fourth pipe, you unlock a bonus area, you collect some coins, and then you come out right before the end of the level. That's muscle memory for most Mario players, I would say, who are, like, on my level of skill. And you do that, like, when it's, like, get through 1-1, and then it rewinds you back, and it's like, yeah, you can't go that way. And it's like, what? Why can't I go that way? Why couldn't you have told me beforehand that I can't go that way? Why did you have to wait? The Metroid ones, a lot of it is like, if you touch any of the lava or the acid, which in Metroid, that doesn't kill you automatically, right? That's not an instant death. It just takes some of your health away. It rewinds you back if you land in any of those things. So, like, Metroid speed running, sometimes it is, well, I'm going to take a little bit of damage and keep moving. Because ultimately, that's the better thing to do here.
But they're not letting you
And
do
they
that.
don't allow you to do that. Or, like, yeah. And it's like, there's nothing, and it's always, you're always told in the moment. The one that really got me, like, clear World 1-1 in Super Mario Brothers 3, not World 1, clear the first map of Super Mario Brothers 3. Of course I'm going to go get the whistle. It is the fastest way to clear the fortress. And it lets you fly up there. It lets you go through the door. And it's not until you're right before picking up the treasure chest where it rewinds you and goes, no, you can't do that. And it's just like, I wish I knew that before. And, like, you got to think on some level they're enjoying that trolling of the people who are playing these games.
Yeah, no,
like
I mean
that.
it is something for the people that know these tricks to
Yeah.
do something new and to give them something new to do.
Yeah.
I on the one hand I want them to celebrate these things. On the other hand, I think giving somebody a new experience is key to make the game something worth playing, right? So yeah, it's a hard balance to strike, and I'm glad that they eventually found it with you. I know that they were struggling. There was a struggle at first, but I'm glad that it seems like you've actually come around on it.
Oh, I mean, I've loved my time with it, especially playing with other people. If you have the opportunity to do it multiplayer, you can play up to 8 people at the same time. And the packs that they offer, you can just play regular challenges, or they have cultivated nice little lists of challenges that, like, kind of fit together, right?
Okay.
Like collect a mushroom challenge, and it's every collect a mushroom challenge that's in the game. Like, that's fun to do that stuff. Or like short but sweet, like all really quick challenges. And like, we just kept playing them because it was fun. But then they also have like the Legend Challenge, which is like beat Donkey Kong, freaking beat, beat the first castle of Zelda, and then beat the Warp Zone speedrun of Super Mario Brothers. And it's like, nobody wanted to do that one with me, and I get that. I understand that. But I do like that they give the option, right? Because if the game is evolving the way that hopefully it can, right? I think the problem with something like Super Mario 35, now that we've seen sort of the next evolutionary entry in that type of series, is that everybody picked 1-1 or 1-2, right? The game never really grew to be a game where people were picking different levels. It was just a lot of playing the first 2 levels of Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
So this one kind of, because they're going to be in control of what the World Championship challenges are every week and what the survival challenges are every week, they're going to be able to cultivate that, and we'll see if people are still playing it a year from now. Or if they're like, we're shutting down the Nintendo World Championship servers.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, if they can keep an online game going, that'll be a big win for Nintendo this year.
Yeah. And then I guess the final game, and I would like to collect a little bit more data before we give like a huge review on it, because we really only get to have that one night, and that one night was fun, is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate mobile game was released on Nintendo Switch this week. because an embarrassment of riches for the Nintendo Switch.
Wait, talk to me about mobile game? It was a
So
mobile game
it was a
first?
mobile game before, yes.
Interesting.
So it didn't
Okay.
have the multiplayer elements until it came to Nintendo Switch.
Okay.
So it was a
That
mobile.
actually does change some things about my opinion. Yeah, we're gonna have to keep playing.
Yeah,
that
we're
game
gonna
a
have to
little
keep
bit
playing it. Yeah,
I've got some feelings about that game, but this new history lesson that I'm getting right here in this moment, plus the fact that we have not spent nearly enough time with it for me to feel comfortable. But yeah, we played a little bit of that.
Yeah.
It was fun in a group. It just Nintendo's online is struggling with that game for some people, including myself. I've tried to play with another group, and it was not doing awesome. But yeah, Nintendo Online is really a struggle in general. It seems like.
yeah. That's and then the test that I did was we set up on the screen, like the big screen in the house, and I connected online with my Switch Lite since I had my Switch Lite out anyway for that, and did online there, and it almost felt like Four Swords, like the Legend of Zelda Four Swords experience, where I could look at the big screen and it was almost lagless, like being able to control my character. But then if I ventured off from like where the leading character was, I'd go down to my screen. Like, and I was so impressed because it's Nintendo Switch Online, which we have like kind of laughed at since its inception.
Yeah, I will point out that in the environment you're describing, you're on literally the exact same network.
Yeah.
So like,
right, I know
you're
that.
not. Yeah, so that's going to be a little bit of a different test than say somebody on the other side of the country playing with you.
Right. No, and I get that. No, and I understand. We had a little bit of some of those little idiosyncrasies while we were playing that first night, Sejohn, right? Where it looked like you were on the other end of the map, but you're like, no, I'm not on the other end of the map. What are you talking
I'm literally
about?
right next to the door.
Yeah, like, it's just, yeah. So I know that's that. But I was impressed, right? Yes, we're on the same network, but I still thought that lag was going to be a huge issue. And the fact that it wasn't really impressed me in a way that, like, I didn't think this would be the conversation we're having. I thought that was going to be my way of, like, judging lag frames. And I'm like, well, damn, it worked out perfectly. So, yeah. Which brings us to the follow-up to the Bring It On snafu from the beginning of this episode, where we don't want to disappoint you, right? And we're all about synergy here at the Say Report, so we're still going to give you a sequel that maybe nobody asked for. We won't be bringing it on again, as we had mentioned, until August.
Until next week.
Yeah.
Right? Until next week. Until next month. Yeah.
Next month. So it's going to be an August recording. It's not going to be the very special episode for July. But over at the Adam Sandler Cinematic Universe, where we're doing the Sandler sequels, we kicked off the season with the movie Bulletproof, starring Damon Wayans and Adam Sandler. And the reason is that it has a Sandler-less sequel. So staying with that, synergizing, cross-sell, blah, blah, blah marketing, the very special episode for July 2024 is going to be on Bulletproof 2. A film that does not feature Damon Wayans or Adam Sandler. It's Faison Love and Kirk Fox, if memory serves correctly. So if you want to be prepared for the very special episode that's releasing this coming Thursday, the same day that Deadpool and Wolverine comes out, so, you know, we get it if you don't listen right away. Make sure you find yourself a copy of Bulletproof 2. It is out there, and I would argue, based on the opening of the film, they're completely fine with you pirating it. But we will talk about that a little bit later in the week. So that's it. So it is Bulletproof 2 is a very special episode. You can go listen to the Bulletproof episode of Adam Sandler Cinematic Universe if you want to have, like, some idea about what's happening. But with that, Sejohn, anything else that you want to add before we send this one to Will to wrap it up and ship it out?
No, we know that there was a lot of other stuff that went on this week. I think we should maybe just like, we addressed it at the beginning. Like, there's a lot of other stuff that went on this week that we did not talk about. There's a reason that we choose to talk about the things we do and a reason that we choose to not talk about the things that we did. So I apologize if there was something you expected us to have an opinion on that we just did not talk about, but it's because that we are in a place right now where we are we're still cooking. Give us time.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of being a show about everything. We can talk about other things besides those things. And Yeah, it is the easiest way to say is I'm not ready to weigh in on. Jesus, just an incredible week of historical events, right?
A myriad of events,
Yeah, may you be blessed to live in
interesting times, my
interesting
brother.
times, right? Oh. But until that, I think that's it. If you want to join the Discord, find us on any of the social medias, Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and there's an invite to the Discord, or send us an email to thesayReport@gmail.com, and we'll give you an invite to the Discord. Also, if you want to submit a 500-word or less review for us to read on the show, send those to thesayReport@gmail.com, or if you're in the Discord, shoot us a DM. But with that, I don't think there's anything else to say. Please enjoy your week before we are blessed with Deadpool and Wolverine. And William, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.